Hey, welcome to Groove Diner After Dark. Again, this is episode 12 of a 13-episode season. I can't even believe that. Thank you, everybody, for joining us again tonight, as always. I wanted to remind you guys about drum camps that are upcoming. I've got two coming up immediately in July the 12th. 12th, 13th, and 14th. There are still 5 spots, 5 spots available for that. That's at Copiah Lincoln Community College in Wesson, Mississippi. That'll be a fun time. Ages upcoming high school freshmen through graduating college seniors are welcome. Days 1 and 2 are marching percussion in particular. We're going to be talking a lot about, hit the mic, a lot about this thing. We're going to talk a lot about not shooting near the bird there, showing the traditional grip. We're going to be talking about that a lot and how to make that work for you. And then on day 3, which is the 14th, we're going to do 9 a.m. to about 1 p.m. nothing but drum set, and how we can apply some of that marching stuff to drum set. You guys know that's kind of my thing. So that's going to be a fun few days there. The school is charging $40 for the 3 days. Come on down. Love to see you. If you'd like to register, I know Dan is down there in Miami, and he's going to post up the link for that here in just a minute, and make sure that it's in here. If you want to sign up, follow that link, and it'll get you there. Tonight, my guest, Sim Cain. Sim is, wow, you talk about somebody who has no idea what a pivotal role he played in my personal career. I mean, not a clue. Sim was an incredibly influential drummer in the mid-90s with the Rollins band. And I knew of Sim, and we met on a session, which we'll talk about. But to do that session, I had to make a personal choice to keep my day job or quit it. And I couldn't do both. So I decided to quit the day job. And because of that, and Sim's understanding of what I was trying to do with myself, and even though he has no idea about any of this, he became something of a mentor to me, and I really watched how he handled himself professionally, how he handled the session, how he handled this was a big session in a big studio with a big producer, and blah blah blah. The way he handled himself in the situation is something that I have never forgotten, and I've always modeled my own behavior, my own willingness to accommodate as much as I was willing to, as much as I could, within reason, shall we say. And I watched Sim do that. I watched him get frustrated and deal with the frustration as well. So he taught me an awful lot about how to handle being a studio musician. And to this very day, I'm incredibly grateful that he took me somewhat under his wing there without even realizing he was doing it. So I'm very, very pleased tonight to bring in Sim Cain. We're going to start with a video of him doing some banging. Whoa, welcome in, Sim Cain. How are you, my friend?
I'm good. I'm glad to be here.
I sent you some notes and said, hey, I want to hear your story because every drummer has one, but I can't let you tell yours without telling mine. And that doesn't happen often. And truly, I know you heard the intro, but I did. I had to make a choice about keeping the day job. I worked at Sam Ash in Nashville, and it was Richie Kohler was doing the pre-production stuff, and he knew I was a drum tuning fanatic, right? And that's how I ended up getting involved with that, was through Richie, who calls himself Rico now. I keep stumbling over his name. But he called me and said, yeah, Sim Cain's going to be playing drums. I'm like, whoa, yeah, okay. And the next thing you know, I'm standing there next to you, and you are just such a great guy, and we struck up a pretty immediate camaraderie there in the studio. And so it's always been something I've wanted to tell you, and now I get a chance to tell you in a very public way that I owe quite a lot of my career to you, and I'm very thankful to you for that.
Well, I'm very flattered, but I think you made the right choice. I quit that Sam gig.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But I have to tell you, I remember that session very fondly because you, Rico, and I sort of set up this little drummer cabal. We had like a whole code system going in the window, like trying to get our takes in, the ones that we chose.
That's right. That's the
fun.
Absolute truth, man. There was one of the songs, which the titles escaped me, but you were fighting for a really cool double bass intro thing that you wrote out, that you've created. And I remember going, that's the coolest thing ever. I sat down and listened to it over and over and wrote it out and put it on a piece of gaff tape. And I still have that piece of gaff tape.
Wow. Amazing. That's amazing.
I actually meant to bring it and show it to you tonight, but it's over in my closet over there. It's crazy. But
I remember that was one of the rare sessions where we were begging them to use a click track.
That's probably
since
right.
we had like a DJ bringing in like, drum loops three-quarters of the way through the song. And the producer absolutely refused. And apparently when the whole record was finished, it was given to other mixing engineers who, because it wasn't cut to a grid, they didn't want anything to do with it. So
that's right.
There you go. I think.
And we both got replaced by Kenny Aronoff.
Kenny Aronoff, yeah, exactly. Which at the time for me was totally bizarre because, he had clearly listened to what we had done and then, simplified my parts.
Yep.
And I would have done probably the same thing just because I didn't want to spend the time figuring out what the other guy played.
Absolutely.
But
that's the absolute truth, man. And I don't think it ended up selling particularly well, which was disappointing because I wanted it to. Because it was Lennon Murphy was the artist. Those of you that are interested, and we both really liked Lennon and liked her music a lot. This was back when Nashville was doing something more than bro country.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Don't the Foo Fighters own that studio now? No. Zach Brown. Right?
Zach Brown owns that studio now. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and in fact, I think he doesn't even own it anymore. I think Zach Brown sold it off as well. I'm not sure. But yeah, but it was a great studio for sure. Well, enough about me. Your story. I want to know more about you. Where did you come from? How did you get your start? How did you end up, becoming Sim Cain the Great? You're, by the way, Sim Cain. You should be like a Game of Thrones character.
In my own mind, I am. I'm all of them. But I was born in London, and I moved to the States when I was just shy of 4 years old.
Right.
Both my grandfathers were drummers, although I only met one of them, and they never met each other. But
no kidding, that's cool.
So I just kind of had it in me. Yeah, from 5 years old, I was obsessed. So I got a little drum kit from Corvettes on my 6th birthday, and I'm basically an autodidact. I'm really mostly self-taught. So, but I came up through a system in Princeton, New Jersey. Mm-hmm. In the high school there, they had a really advanced music department, and there was just some terrific other drummers there who were great, mentors. So I learned mostly from them.
Sure.
And just sort of playing in the program.
Sure.
But I never really had any formal lessons. I had like 6 formal lessons when I got to college.
Okay.
And then I dropped out. Dropped out and started a band.
Oh well, did you have drum heroes as a kid, or was that something that escaped you? You were just out there to do your thing.
Oh no, I definitely had heroes. Seeing Buddy Ritter in the Carson show was just made my head explode.
Yeah, right.
I would probably, when I was around that age, my three heroes at that time were probably Buddy Rich and Billy Cobham for sure. Billy Cobham's
Yeah.
probably my number one.
Billy Collin.
And
Okay, I can hear that in your playing
Art
actually. And who?
Thanks. That's great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Art Blakey.
Oh, sure, of course.
We had his record lying around the house, and I just, I dug the way he really kind of had an R&B approach to bebop. Like he was
Right.
like a monolith of groove. That hi-hat was unrelenting.
Oh, you're not
So,
kidding.
I dug that.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's,
That super press roll he had. He had that amazing press roll.
yeah, absolutely.
I still don't play that damn thing without thinking of Art Blakey. Like, oh, here comes Art Blakey, Phil.
Man, that's cool. I love that you do that. I have my things. There's some Vinnie Colaiuta stuff that if I play it, I know immediately that I'm stealing from Vinnie. That's the Vinnie. There it goes.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah, you definitely. I think more drummers than they like to admit have fills that have the name of the person they copped it from.
Yeah,
attached.
oh, for sure. Oh well,
I know that I was working in a record store in the late teens, I guess, when a Gino Vanelli record called The Nightwalker came out that had, and that was pretty much the first I'd heard of Vinnie Colaiuta. I mean, I knew he was playing with Zappa, but I had sort of taken a break after the Bozio years,
Sure.
But the way he played on that record was just jaw-dropping. I just couldn't believe it. And it was funny, even though it was that late in my development because I was still pretty green. Right. But he really, when I heard that, I was like, I want to play like that, man.
Yep.
In my high school, and that's where I met Andrew Weiss. He was the bass player there. So he and I started a instrumental sort of noise post-fusion band. I don't know what you call it.
Right.
And we formed our own record label. It was really in the middle of the height of the DIY, era. So it was early '80s, and
4 tracks and cassette
we made
tapes?
that record. The guitar. No, we actually, we saved our money and went to a studio.
Okay, well, good for
and,
you.
Yeah, but we were the label and we were the manufacturer and we were distributing it. And, and we really learned a lot about the business and had surprising success for the kind of music that we were playing. But the guitarist in that band went on to play with the Ministry and Thrill Kill Cult and stuff like that.
Okay, nice.
The Chicago.
You have always been really on top of the business. I mean, your drumming was, I put this quote down just because it's the greatest thing in the world. Your drumming was described as brutal but brainy, creative, warm, and caring. And I just loved that because brutal but brainy is exactly you. I mean, you're one of the smartest people I've ever known, and I know a lot of smart people. And I love talking with you because you've got such depth to you when we have conversations, whatever they may be. And I love that. So the fact that you were on top of the business at 19 or whatever is not a surprise to me at all.
Well, we were just curious, so we were going to figure out how to get it done.
Right.
And,
that's fantastic.
But it was really satisfying because there are these services like CMJ type services that would consult to radio, college radio.
Yeah.
And some of it was semi-payola. Like they were like, if you pay us some money, we'll distribute we'll tell a radio station to play this. And we actually approached one of those companies who flatly turned us down. But then the following week, we showed up at number 7 on their chart.
That's fantastic. Hey, look at that. My wife is here. My wife says hello to you.
Yeah.
Can you see?
Hello.
Can you see the comments?
Oh.
Yeah.
That's nice, Natalie. Well, he speaks very highly of you on Facebook.
There you go, right? But not in real life, ever. Oh, man.
Well, that I wouldn't know. I haven't met
her. I know, yeah. So tell me something. Let's the formative years explain a lot of the way that you're able to do such diverse gigs. I mean, we'll get to Rollins in a minute, but Jay Giles' band, which I mean, that you were right on the heels of that when we met. And I remember going, that was the soundtrack of my youth. Literally listening to that was a big part of things for me. And then, John Zorn, really? I mean, then the Rollins thing. I can't even get my mind around somebody that's got the abilities to play that many different styles at the level you do. But maybe I get it now.
I think I don't like to. I mean, it might be all semantics, but I try not to use terms like styles and genres, and I like context better. So, if you can be yourself in multiple contexts, then you just find your way into the music, and then get out of the way.
I love that. That's fantastic, actually. That's really, really nice. You're right, because Zorn, I can't really even imagine what that's like to play in that context. That's such a different thing.
With him, he doesn't tell you what to play. You're really, the big challenge is to just bring yourself to gigs like that. For most of the part, if it's largely improvisational, he had these conversations that were more what we call game pieces, which was sort of structuring what you're about to play, but he wasn't really telling you what to play.
Right. I did some of that in college myself, actually, where we had, typically it was a trio format, and the trio would play off of each other and work through exactly what you're talking about, the context of things, and it'd be sort of an outline or a framework from within which we would try to create interesting music, soundscapes, whatever.
Back then, I was really interested in the idea of dividing time into larger increments. Like if you look like a graduated test tube that has the little lines on it, and if you consider those 8 notes or 16ths, I was trying to get the quarters and half notes without playing that stuff in between, and then even stronger, like to full phrases. Even if it sounded like complete garbage or not garbage, it was, very eclectic. To create that phrase, and then it came back again, that kind of stuff.
Wow, that's such.
But through Zorn, through Zorn, I was able to meet Mark Hbo, and that was a big deal for me because I ended up making a lot of music with him, and he's like he's a real master. I don't know if you're aware of his music.
I'm not. So tell me about him.
He's played with Tom Waits, Elvis Costello.
Gotcha.
He's on that Robert Plant and what's her name record?
Alice Strauss.
No, thank you very much,
yeah,
Alice Strauss.
Absolutely. Yeah.
In fact, I think he may have ended up doing some musical direction for her. But he's like he's a session guitarist, but he's also a very like avant guitarist when you let him do his own thing. And talk about smart guys. He's like that guy's a genius, and he's a great conversationalist.
I can imagine.
He was really, and I, the first tour I did with him, and which is how a lot of the bands that came out of what they called the Knitting Factory scene, which was the sort of the New York new music. They were getting booked in jazz clubs all over Europe, and what they would do is buy you rail passes, and you would do a tour by train. Nice. So it was fascinating.
I would think,
but so you're seeing a different drum kit every night. You're bringing, I brought a few broken cymbals because I wanted to keep it light, and I didn't want to lose anything I couldn't afford to.
Holy cow! I can imagine, man. Wow.
But that was really a game changer for me because it went from sort of being traumatized every day at sound check to like, okay, and what instrument am I playing this music on? It was like a whole new way of looking at it, and that started to get exciting instead of like frightening.
It's funny because that you said earlier you have to bring yourself to the gig. That in and of itself is you bringing yourself to the gig, regardless of what gear you're playing. That's an incredibly challenging thing to do.
Yep. As my friend Winston Roy says, and I'm sure someone else, but wizard no wand.
Say it again. You broke up a little bit.
Oh, it's the wizard, not the wand.
Exactly right. Yes,
You
though
know,
I don't know that the Harry Potter fans would agree. That all right. So we have to talk about Henry Rollins and the Rollins Band, right? I mean, that's what ultimately brought you to the forefront of the consciousness of the drummer collective in a lot of ways. Tell it,
and
Rollins.
age.
Exactly right. Rollins being fresh off the Black Flag thing and the breakup of Black Flag, that's when you got involved, right? Right on the edge of that. I remember you telling me that he was so intense as a person on stage that at one point you felt you had to match his intensity from behind the kit, and one day you went, nope, just can't do that anymore. And when you let go of that, it allowed you to play the gig better. He told me that.
Did I say that?
You did.
Well, I mean, I certainly wanted to be,
Shirtless.
as athletic and as physical. That's what the gig was about. It was
Absolutely
really ritualistic, especially for Henry, because it was more about ritual than,
right.
I don't know, Pavarotti for him anyway. So
Sure, of course.
And yeah, I don't know. I think what happened more was I couldn't reconcile the different contexts I was playing in, and I was playing very hard in that band,
Sure.
and I was not nearly as articulate as I wanted to be.
Right.
But at a certain point, I don't know whether it's between getting my strength, onto a plane and also relaxing a little. I was able to bridge those gaps, and sort of, I think in my best years in the Rollins Band, I was able to really combine all of those elements.
Well, speaking of that, we have a video of one of your best years with the Rollins Band. So let's take a quick look. Man, that is incredibly intense stuff going on, really. Your guitar player looks like he's fighting for his life, too.
He was. In fact, I used to have this. It's funny you should mention that. I used to have one of those gong drums, the Tama gong.
Oh, yeah.
It's like a big mounted drum, and we'd stick an RE20 right up inside that thing, then just kill the subs.
I guess.
And Teo, our sound man, he was really, he was a member of the band, so he was really into it. And I would, about once a week at sound check, I would hit that thing, and Chris would leap up in the air and turn around with his angry, like, "What was that?"
Right.
And I was like, "Yeah, that's my detonator over here. You should be into that, not like not startled by it."
That's awesome, man.
He was really angry.
Wow, that's funny. So he truly was fearing for his life. That's fantastic. Oh man. So tell me.
Problem is, he may be watching this right now.
Oh well, and that's okay. I know it's all said with love, right?
He feared nothing.
So tell me, man, how did you end up with playing with Henry? How did that come about? How'd you get involved with that scene? That's DC stuff, right? That was all part of Washington DC.
Well, this goes back to the band that I had at high school with Andrew Weiss, the instrumental trio. That was Evade. And around that time that band packed it in, Black Flag was looking for a new bass player.
Okay.
So Andrew sent Greg Ginn, the guitarist and leader of Black Flag, the copies of the records we'd made and the letter saying, "I'll come tomorrow." The shorter version of the story is they didn't end up giving him the Black Flag gig. At first they were going to, but then King called him and said, "I'm with someone, but do you and whoever played drums on those records you sent me want to start a separate band with me?" So we started another instrumental guitar trio with Greg Ginn, from the leader of Black Flag.
Right.
And then in 1986, we were a support group for 7-month Black Flag tour.
Really?
Which back in those days, yeah, if you were a support group on that tour, basically meant you were a glorified roadie. Like,
yeah, right.
We had like a PA, it was a Rat PA, so it was I don't know if you're familiar with Rat sound.
Yep.
And it was one of his early prototypes. You could rock a Coliseum with that, and we're squeezing it into storefronts and shit like that. But anyway, so your obligation was to, like, once you move these 18 cabinets or whatever it was, then you get to play.
Right, of course, yes, because that's what matters most.
And here's your $5 for dinner. Here's your $5 for dinner and a bottle of Perrier. I'm sure you're not.
My favorite tour story ever involves a vegetarian band leader and him not feeding us for about a day and a half and saying, "I'm going to run get some food." And when he came back, he had a loaf of bread, a jar of peanut butter, and a jar of jelly.
You could have done that yourself.
I'm saying, right? I mean, oh my gosh. We were down in Florida somewhere, and he shows up, and I'm like, no. I called Natalie and I said, "I'm getting on a plane. I'm coming home."
But you didn't, did you?
I didn't. No, of course not. Hey, tell me this. I know that...
What, and give up on all that glory?
All of it. I mean, how can you miss out? So Greg Ginn, Henry Rollins, they didn't like each other in the end.
Well, I don't like to speak on that too much because most of it was just largely misunderstanding.
Okay.
They had different expectations for each other, and they were trying to screw each other. I think they just didn't understand each other's agenda in a way.
Well, the real question I have about it is, how did it impact either of them that you were playing with the other? Did they care?
Well, what happened was, that Black Flag tour was the last Black Flag tour. Okay, so
right.
They went home, and Gone, which is the name of the band I had with Greg, Gone. Right. Okay. We ended up touring another 3 months. I actually worked out that in 1986, we were on the road for 10 months total.
Whew. And
we used to play. We had a miniature setup that we would bring to 1 to 3 record stores in the afternoon.
Right.
And play 1 or 2 shows in the evening. And I worked out we actually did over 600 sets in 10 months in 1986. And I was literally playing till my hands were bleeding. There's no faking.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing.
I mean,
so
600 sets? Wow.
So, by the time that was over, even Gone was pretty much burnt. We all had enough. And then about 6 months later, Henry had put out a record that he had made with Chris, the guitarist from Rollins' band,
right?
And was looking to tour with that. And he just asked Andrew and I to do it. And really, I think a lot of the tension around that switching of bands and the rivalry or whatever was more fed by outside influences. I don't think any of us paid any attention to that.
That's fair. Yeah.
We were just getting back to work.
Yeah, I can see that being the case. Okay, well, that makes perfect sense as well. Jay Giles, I've got to know that story because, like I said, that was the soundtrack of my youth. And when I found out you, Mr. Rollins band guy, were doing the Jay Giles band, I was like, wait, what? 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 No.
Oddly, the gig wasn't that different. They're not that dissimilar because, Rollins' band was hard rocking, biting on some R&B styles at times, and the J. Giles Band was like Sam and Dave on amphetamines. So, it was it had a real, a real similar aesthetic in a very odd, roundabout way.
This is the most quotable show I've ever done. Sam and Dave on amphetamine.
Happy to oblige.
Thank you so much. Oh my God, that's hysterical, man. Oh wow.
Yeah, so that was a weird confluence how that came to be. Because when I first moved to New York, I did this session for a movie that was an independent movie, I think about a bar, and they wanted to make a fictitious jukebox, like a dive bar jukebox.
Okay.
So we were just recording all the songs. So I went a day and did a bunch of different tracks, bunch of different styles this time, because one was with Debbie Harry, another was Hanson. I did a trio with Evan Dando and
interesting.
Adam Roth, who passed away recently. Anyway, but so one of the producers on that was in the Uptown Horns, which was like the preeminent rock and roll horn section for New York. And they had toured with the Stones, and they had toured, I think, with the J. Giles Band previously. So when the J. Giles Band wanted to, they were doing a reunion. They hadn't played a note in 20 years or something.
Right.
Everyone was interested except for the drummer, Stephen Joe. Was the only one that grew up. So he was
why would he do a thing like that?
I beats the hell out of me.
I know, right?
I'm probably older now than he was then.
That's probably true, huh? Yeah.
So, I had done that session a year or two prior, really wasn't thinking anything about it. And then I had met Seth Justman at he's the keyboard player from J. Giles Band, at like a party for a mutual friend who had taken his bar exam. Had nothing to do with music at all. So we chatted there. I was like, that's a nice guy. Oh, here's a good quote. He told me that he said to him that Magic Dick was like John Coltrane on harmonica. and I was like, okay, Seth.
Okay.
I like Magic. So we met then, and then more time went by, and I get this call saying, you're probably going to get a call from a guy in the J. Giles Band. I knew nothing about any of this, in the works.
Right.
And then he called me, Seth called me, and he said, listen, I was asking Crispin from the Uptown Horns for a recommendation for a drummer, and he mentioned you, and I thought, oh, I met that guy at a party. He's a real nice guy.
Right.
And then I hung up the phone, and then a minute later, the phone rang, and it was Magic Dick calling Seth Justman and said, listen, man, I just saw this drummer on SNL last night, and he's the one. He's got to be in the band. And Seth was like, well, who, what band was this? And he was like, it's something called the Rollins Band. And so Seth thought, like, well, this is it. It's got, it's in the ether or whatever.
Wow. So suddenly
it's in the God's will.
Right. Ultimately, you end up owing Lorne Michaels and Saturday Night Live your tour with J. Giles. I like it.
Yeah, nah.
Maybe just being a cool hang. Oh, brother, that's so
exactly. Awesome. But yeah, so that turned into a really, really fun tour.
Man, that's so funny because it is. People ask me this a lot. Where how do you get this? How did this happen? How did this happen? The questions I'm asking you, I get these questions a lot too, and especially for a while. I was the house band drummer at Univision, the Spanish language network out here, and it was because the guitarist was someone that I played in a funk band with, who when he had subbed for someone else, and then we ended up playing in several other rock bands together. And he called me and he said, hey, I'm MDing over at Univision doing the morning show, the house band thing. You want to do that? I'm like, yeah, I don't play Latin. Because it doesn't matter. Come on, we'll do it. It'll be fun. Okay, fine.
Bring your cowbell and claves.
Something like that, And I'm like, I don't speak Spanish. He goes, we'll make fun of you in Spanish. Okay. And I had a great time. I did that for 4 years because of that one simple little one conversation somewhere along the way.
And it really is about word of mouth or just being there. I think
Yeah.
other than word of mouth, in fact, maybe even more, the majority of gigs that I would get were often from just walking down Avenue Way in New York. People bump into you
Oh, that's
when
true.
you're there. Everyone was living in the East Village. It was like a huge college dorm or something.
Right. Well,
You just run into people, and then they see you, and they're like, "Oh, of course, man, I got a gig for you."
right.
That used to happen with Zorn all the time. We lived in the same neighborhood, and he'd be like,
Did you?
"Oh, yeah."
Well, that's cool. Totally can see that happening. People don't realize what a small
Yeah,
community the music world really is.
yeah. In fact, I've really had very little. I have very little experience auditioning or anything like that, and
Hmm.
I think my terror of auditioning manifests itself in my indignance about being asked to do so. So
You're like, you've heard me. Either hire me or don't.
yeah, like make up your mind.
Yeah,
You don't
right.
need to hear me. If
That's,
I can do it or not.
I get it. I do. I absolutely get it, man. Wow. Well, tell me
I'd rather
this.
go have lunch with.
Yeah, right. Of
Go on.
course. Of course. No, tell me. I always ask this question of my guests. The biggest gigs are not necessarily the best gigs. My personal favorite gig I ever played was a little coffee house gig with like 6 people in the room. But it's the best I ever played. It's the best band I ever played with, I think. One of. And it's the best gig I ever did. Do you have any experience like that where perhaps the biggest gig
Oh,
wasn't the best gig?
no, absolutely. That stuff is really educational because, and there was another, thing that I developed. I guess from either being home from being on the Rollins doing the Rollins and the Gone thing where you're really playing at full velocity,
Yeah, right.
and then being in a tiny cafe where you got to the groove has to have intensity without that kind of volume.
Hmm.
And I really had a revelation about that. At the time I was like, this is interesting because like Chad Smith could be playing a Clyde Stubblefield figure,
Right.
but it sounds nothing like Clyde because
Nope.
he's playing it at a much diminished velocity, and it grooves, and it grooves in a different way, and you discover things about dynamics, time, and groove that I found all those little tiny place gigs invaluable.
Yeah.
A lot of those, I was playing with my buddy String Bean, who plays a lot around the Jersey Shore, Asbury Park area, and
Right.
that was a really great gig for me because it was very low pressure
Hmm.
with no expectation, and no one was telling me how to play, so I could
Oh, yeah.
I could play the same song 6 different ways on 6 successive gigs. It didn't
Oh, sure. Absolutely.
that was fun,
Yeah.
and at times I was like you're playing a little restaurant and I hate to admit this, but you're like, I think I'm going to play this song that I know so well now, left-handed.
I don't know if I'm that bold.
So it got to a point where it was part of my discipline was like, you have to play like at least 2 songs tonight, riding with your left and putting your snare on with your right, on that kind of stuff. It was great for your playing.
Well, clearly, that's
I told that
fantastic.
to another guy. I was touring with Papa Chubby. He's like a rock blues guitar guy, and
Yeah.
I told that story, and I still can remember him looking back in the rearview mirror of his van, and our eyes meeting, and going, "Don't do that on my gig."
You probably can pull it off without any problem. So that's the whole thing. Can you still make a living in New York as a musician? Can musicians still make it happen in New York?
Well, I don't know if you're asking the right person here because it started to price me out,
That's fair.
and a gigging musician, as in terms of playing bars and restaurants and
Mhm.
clubs in New York, they don't do that great because there's a lot of competition up there.
Sure.
But there are obviously musicians that are making it work for themselves.
Yeah.
A lot of it is, I think the nature of that has changed a lot. Whereas several decades ago, the idea of being a musician in New York was to try and get as many sessions as you can.
Mhm.
But those sessions are gone, and so now the impetus or is to try and get gigs, like get a tour to go on,
Right.
find a good group to go on. And I began to notice it seemed like most of the roots rockers I knew in New York, the business model was to be able to sit in with the Allman Brothers at the Beacon Theater. Because they would, they do like a month-long run there. So everyone, all the gig rats would come sniffing around for a little time on stage, and then get that almond bump. That's a good thing.
That's awesome. You've done a little TV work. You were mentioning HBO. Tell me about what you did there.
Well, a couple years ago, I worked on the HBO series Vinyl, which was a sort of it was based on the music scene in the 70s. It was produced by Martin Scorsese and Mick Jagger.
I watched it. I remember it.
And so at the time,
yeah,
it was really, I think the presentation was almost to make it like a comic book. All the characters were larger in life.
Yeah.
All the colors were super in your face, and and there's a lot of one-dimensional characters. But
there's some truth to that, yeah.
So at the time, it was kind of exciting because they needed so much music, whether they were recreating, an Alice Cooper scene or some jazz or blues or funk scene. So musicians all over the New York area were getting tons of work from it. And in the storyline, there was a fictitious proto-punk group that Mick Jagger's son James was playing the lead singer in, and he was definitely part of the storyline. And they were called the Nasty. So we did. I did all of the Nasty Bits drum parts for them, and then there's a Velvet Underground. The first session I did was a Velvet Underground scene, where they go to go to some club and they're playing, and I think what endeared me to them at that point was we were recording everything at Electric Lady Studios, and it was the first time I was supposed to be there, and I think they called me while I was on the train or something, and they were like, "How much time do you think you're going to need to set up? And what drums do you need out?" And I was like, "Well, I've done a little research. You're going to put a kick drum on its side on a chair and a snare drum and a cymbal. I think my setup to record time should be about 10 or 15 minutes." And they were like, "You're hired. Who is this guy?"
Nice.
But it ended up being, I probably did at least 12 sessions for them over the course of a year.
No kidding.
So
you're all over
really
that
exciting.
show.
Electrically, I did a lot of stuff for them. But there's a ton of other musicians that are all over it, and and the core guys I was working with was like Lee Ronaldo from Sonic Youth, and Don Fleming, who's a producer and guitarist, and then Sal Maida, the bass player. This guy, he's someone you should interview. He's played with, Roxy Music, Sparks. Oh. He did the Ghost bass parts on the Runaways records. He's like, wow, he's the real deal. And then I guess Tony Shanahan from Patti Smith's group, he did some. It was really a really fun time, and they treated us very well. So
that's awesome.
It was a real disappointment. It was disappointment when it was not renewed, because we were all looking like, if this thing takes off, that's a lot of steady work, and a lot of fun, and
Kendall Johnson. We've got viewers from all over the world. We've got Australia, South Africa, Mississippi, right here in Encino, California, with me. We've got New York. Justin's up there in New York. We got all over the country and world here. And Kendall Johnson just said that he went off camera and watched that whole Starve video, and he's like, "Oh my God!" So he really loved it. So I agree. I watched the whole thing quite a bit, and it's really, really, really good. Sorry to cut you
I'm
there.
still in pain.
What's that?
I'm still in pain from it.
I bet you are. So as I mentioned to you, I typically have about 100 or so people watch the video tonight, and then over the next 2 or 3 days, we end up with about 1,000. And a lot of them are kids that are getting ready to go to school, or people that are it's too late for them, and they'll watch it on their lunch break or whatever. So especially the kids that are thinking about doing this for a living in the future. Got any thoughts on what you might suggest to them, how they can be successful with this whole madness in this modern day and age?
Well, unfortunately, what comes to mind is when a very good friend of mine, who's a singer-songwriter, he's had a very good career, and he was very young. He ran into Tom Waits at Cantner's Deli.
Okay, right out here.
And Mr. Waits was, out there, and Mr. Waits was paying his bill, and my friend went up to him and said, "Excuse me," he was, it's like, this is an opportunity. He said, "Excuse me, Mr. Waits, do you have any advice for a fledgling young singer-songwriter?" And Waits paused, and he turned to him and said, "Forget about it." So, I don't know, buddy.
That's a good impression,
kids,
by the way.
Forget about it.
But they're not. I didn't. You didn't. So, they're not.
I know. What was the question again?
It was how to ignore Sim's advice on becoming a professional musician. It was.
Well,
do you have any suggestions for up and coming young musicians in particular?
Yes, I do actually, and my perspective on that has changed over the years.
Yep.
And for me, I gave myself no second choices. I was like, there's no fallback, there's no plan B. If you don't have a plan B, you got to make plan A work.
Yes, sir.
I'm not sure if that's the best route to go.
Yeah.
And I think also, and I don't think it's really enough just to be a drummer. You gotta learn some harmony, some guitar and piano, singing. I mean, drummers who can sing, they get more work. That's how it goes. And you don't want to back yourself in a corner in terms of options. And then also, sort of, I don't know, a social vibe, or I don't know, your place in the chemistry of your band. You could feel sort of left out if you're the only one that can't pick up a guitar. If people are sitting around and if there's people sitting around the living room trading songs, and everybody thinks you're just gonna want to, I don't know, tap on a table or something.
Right,
that
sure.
gets old.
Yeah.
You want to be able to participate. So I mean, that's on a very basic level, but on a terms of professionalism level, you really need to develop all these other different facets of the music. If you want to be a musician, that's a better pursuit than saying I'm a drummer. In my opinion,
I completely agree
work on your drums. But I've always tried to find melody out of my drums anyway, so I kind of kick myself for not having developed some of those other venues when I was younger.
Yep.
Like I if I'm there multi-tracking at home, I can figure out a guitar part, but that's because I can punch in a chord if I need to.
Right.
But or I can stick my tongue out of my mouth and come up with a little melody. That's a lot different. That's a lot different than performing or jamming with people.
Yeah, it is. I'm a pretty good singer myself, so the background singing is something that I really honed in on, and I play piano badly.
Yeah, man.
So I get it.
Definitely. You want to develop that stuff.
Kendall has asked you a question directly here. Sim, I noticed you have every tom and snare angled towards you. Could you talk about angled versus flat, like seems to be a trend lately?
I guess I can. I think at that point, my snare angle was fairly extreme because I was hitting really hard, and I didn't want every shot to be a rim shot. Do you know what I mean? I was, I guess. I'm trying to remember. I mean, that's so long ago, and my angles, they morph over time. I know I certainly now have a much it's flatter, still not all the way flat, but a lot of it comes out of now that I think of it, about my actual height. I have this theory that tall drummers have an advantage because they have a lower center of gravity and higher reach over the drum kit. And so, seriously, like for me, setting up a 24-inch kit is going to be an issue about whether that tom is going to be too high for me now.
Well, how tall are you?
I'm 5'8".
Yeah, okay. So I see what you're saying. I'm 6'2", so I have kind of the opposite problem.
Yeah, I see how high you set up your toms.
Yeah, I know, right? I do. Everybody complains about it, man. I don't know how you play this thing. Well, like this. That's how I play it.
I think a lot of the angle of the drums had a lot to do with me wanting to be able to have that projection on them when I was playing that hard stuff.
Right.
But since then, I've always tried to sit up straight. That was also one of the reasons I put my cymbals up so high.
Yeah.
But I'm not like swimming that way so much anymore. So the cymbals came down a little bit, and the drums flatten out a little more.
Yeah.
I think I don't know, the best I can answer your question is whatever angle works for you, where you can get a good resonant tone out of the drum and not dented with the head of your stick.
That's absolutely right.
There's times where I look at drummers, their angles they're at, and I'm like, no, that's just all wrong. Impossible.
Right.
Like,
all the time.
How does he get a good strike on that drum when it's at an 80-degree angle or something?
Right. I mean, Nico McBrain. Every drum seems like it's freaking vertical, almost.
Yeah. Now, see. And I think guys that have them like that aren't playing that hard. They don't, which, right. That's funny because it sounds like almost like macho competitiveness. Oh man, Nico, he's not hitting them. That's not exactly what I mean. But
I'm going to tell him you said that.
I suppose I don't know. With a nose like his, I'm afraid.
As well, I think you should be, man. He's probably knows how to take a punch.
No cartilage left there. The dude could bite a wall.
I'm saying he could. Oh man! And with that, just one more question for you. COVID. How did that affect your life outside of music? Outside of music, how did COVID change your world?
At first, it seemed like very little difference. Like we're just gonna sit on our porch and watch the river. That's what we do.
Right.
But I think I don't know, buddy. I don't know if I can divorce music because for me at first it was a relief.
Right.
Every time I was slogging it out, playing bars and restaurants, kids, that's what you're gonna do in between those other money-making gigs.
Yes,
you got your anchor gigs, and then you got your day-to-day, and you end up doing that.
Yep.
But I would come the past, few years, every time I get to the dog days of winter, because it's cold and dark here.
I can imagine. That's why I live in California.
I would always start. Exactly. I would always start fantasizing about I would just like to take off January through March. Right. That'd be cool. And then, then I'll get back at it. So when COVID came up, it was like, oh, wow, that's not so bad. Someone's making that decision for me.
Yeah.
And I had been experiencing some repetitive motion pains in my shoulders, and my thumbs. And I thought, oh, this is fine. This will be a great reset. I'll get to, relax and not play for a minute.
Sure.
But then they kept moving the goalposts, and I found myself sort of descending into a pretty significant depression. It was not. Sure. I didn't have the greatest time.
Yeah. I think that was pretty common amongst musicians in particular because we tend to be empaths. And because of that, we take on the weight of everyone else and the weight of the world and the weight of COVID itself. So it's not at all surprising for me to hear you say that. I certainly dealt with a pretty serious depression during the course of it as well. So I'm glad you made it through the other side.
Oh, thank you. I am too. And you.
Thanks.
I think a pivotal moment came when I just one gig and I hadn't made in 8 months or something,
Right.
and I was the leader on the hit. And it was like outside an ice cream parlor. I was like, this is fine. We'll play a little jazz trio music,
Right.
and not to just get our feet wet,
Sure.
but not to get too into it. There came up with there was a money discrepancy, like the ice cream store took our tip bucket, and then I'm in there like arguing on the phone with an owner, like about $150 gig,
Right.
and I was like, and she's, like, oh no, we need that for our charity, and I was like, charity? Like, I know everyone who put money in that thing, and and I'm here with a band that hasn't played in 8 months. We're, talk about charity.
Yeah, right.
And so no. And then I walked outside, and then the heavens opened, and we got drenched.
Perfect. Yes.
My drums, everything, just soaked, and I was like, "Well, that's perfect." So that really summed up like 2020 for me.
Yeah.
And things were looking really, really, really gloomy at that point. But I actually found some support groups that met in Zoom meetings of industry professionals, musicians, and roadies. And backline people. There's a great organization called the Backline, and they have resources for musicians, whether it's free yoga or actual psychotherapy, or or these group meetings. And that was a real shot in the arm for me.
Is it backline.com.org something?
Yep.
One of those. Okay, we'll find it. We'll post it up, because that sounds like something to be really valuable for musicians to find out. So we'll make sure we post that up. Nice. All right, cool. Well, one last final honest to God, we have a friendship defining question that we must cover. I met you 20 plus years ago. And if you get this wrong, you're off the friends list.
It's over.
Man. It's done. Yeah.
All right.
What is your favorite Rick Springfield song?
Now, do I have to come right out with it? Can I qualify this a little bit?
Qualify it all you like.
Okay. I had an idea this question was coming, because I know how near and dear Rick Springfield is to your heart.
Yes.
So I was trying to think what my favorite song would be, and then I remembered a story from years ago when, I don't know if this is actually true or not, but I'd like to believe it is, that Rick Springfield, he actually he wanted to cover Salisbury Hill,
Right, Peter Gabriel.
Peter Gabriel's.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know whether he needed clearance or asked permission, but Peter Gabriel turned him down. So I was gonna say, well, by all means, Salisbury Hill is my favorite Rick Springfield song, but there's no evidence he actually did it.
Oh, okay.
So and I was consulting with a friend, and I was texting with a group text of three of my colleagues. And I was like, any of you guys know anything about Rick Springfield? And they were like, no, sir. And I said, yeah, I knew it was a long shot. I didn't think you would, but I thought that maybe one of you would be like, although he does have that one song, The Story of the Kumquats, and that will reach down your throat, rip your heart out, and place firmly in your rectum. So none of those had those, so I couldn't use that either. So, buddy, I chose "Bop Till You Drop."
Why?
Now you might wonder why.
Why? Is it because of the dystopian music video that goes with it? Is that what it is?
Video's fantastic.
It is. It's unbelievable.
I went over to the handy YouTube there, and I thought, what's this? And it's got that spooky synth intro, and then it's got that very 80s, 90s, let's get funky vibe. And I was like, okay, he's doing it. So then I decided to, I better get these lyrics out. So I dialed up the lyrics to have a look at them. And this is what sealed it for me.
Tell me.
There's a lot of lyrics.
Yeah?
Yeah, and I was like, amazing how you can include so many lyrics the song not really be about much.
Yeah, right.
So
Seriously,
it's
it's really not about anything.
I was like, that has to be, a gift in its own, like a.
Yeah. One day I want to have
talent.
him. I want to have him on this show one day. I don't know him or anyone in his circle, but I'd love to have him on the show and ask him this question.
What his favorite Sim Cain
His
song
favorite Rick
is?
Springfield song is. Yeah, I want to know what he would say. I have to post this up. Toby Simmons, Toby. I asked Leland Sklar this question on your behalf. What did Leland say, Toby? I got to know what Leland had to say. That's pretty crazy.
It's gotta be Bob City. Totally. Tell the truth. It's Bob till you drop.
It's got to be Bob. That's so funny, man. I never would have pegged you for that one, but hey, it's fun. I get it. Okay. Nice.
I mean, if you want full disclosure, we'll leave that out. Yeah, okay. That's my favorite. Of course,
it has.
I checked out all of Rick.
100%.
I checked out all of Springfield's songs, and that's the one.
I'm going to give you one that you're actually going to like. I promise you.
Good.
Okay. It's called Venus in Overdrive. It was released in like 2012, and if it had been released by kind of anybody but Rick Springfield in 2012, it would have been a major hit for sure.
No, I think he's definitely has a talent. He's capable of things. When I first started thinking of it, my first, I don't know why, the first thing I ran to in my head was, talking about like TV actors who went the rock and roll route.
Right.
And for me, my favorite in that group would be David Essex doing Rock On.
Oh, interesting.
Hey. Yeah, you know the song?
Yeah, for sure. And then,
totally psychedelic. And
it's somebody else like
it's a marvel of studio manipulation.
Go ahead. You were breaking up. My apologies. Go ahead.
Oh, I said it's a marvel of studio manipulation. I mean, they're really that David Essex Rock On. It's totally psychedelic.
Somewhere another soap opera guy did a version of that in the 80s as well.
Really?
I can't remember who that was. I don't remember who it was.
Why?
He was from like a soap opera. I don't know. Seriously, man. Oh,
That's one of those records. That's one of those records you just got to leave alone. Man.
Yeah, right. It's true. A half-hour conversation about his favorite Rick Springfield song. Really, Toby? Leland Sklar has a half-hour conversation about Rick Springfield songs. That's awesome. Well, so Sim, we're gonna call it
that day.
Yeah, right. He was. We're gonna call it a night here, my friend. Thank you so very, very much for hanging out with me and talking. And this has been so much fun. We're going to leave you guys with a video of Sim playing with Ween, a little bit of a groovy thing now. So we went from drum solo bashing to oh my gosh intense to a super groovy little outro. Thanks a ton, Sim. We'll see you soon.
Sure. Okay, bye-bye.
What a great interview. It's so fun to see my friend Sim. I haven't talked to him in far too long. That was so fun. Tonight's Buddy's Beats is going to be a little bit different. Normally, this is my inspirational moment of the show. But tonight, I wanted to talk about something that doesn't get talked about as much as it possibly should. Someone asked me several weeks back when we did the It's Your show where everyone was posting questions prior to the show about things that don't get noticed but are crucial to doing the gigs, be they studio or live. And I don't know why I didn't think of this in the moment, because easily the number one, and I think I didn't think about it then because it's just part of me, is my in-ear monitoring. And I use a brand called Future Sonics, as you see here, my little name there. I've got a couple different sets of these, and Future Sonics was created by a guy named Marty Garcia. Marty is the guy who invented in-ear monitoring for Todd Rundgren way back on the tour, way back when. And they're very different from the other in-ear monitors on the market. So this is not meant to be an ad, but certainly I want you to know about them because he does not advertise. He relies on word of mouth. And if you take a look at his client roster, it's Sting and Pink and the Rolling Stones and Fox Sports and it's literally the best of the best of the best. And why is that? Well, I'll tell you. I discovered them because a friend of mine, a drummer friend of mine, kind of a name guy, I was walking around the NAMM show trying every set of in-ears. I needed some new ones, so I was trying every one of them, and I just wasn't getting what I wanted. And I ran into this friend of mine, and he said, go check out Future Sonics. I'm like, who's that? So when I walked over there, I met Daniel East, whom you guys know. He's now currently running the show on the Miami side of things. Dan worked for Future Sonics at the time, and he put the in-ears in my ears, and I sat down, and I literally started laughing out loud at how much better they sounded than everything else. Because Future Sonics doesn't do drivers, they do these little speakers. They are literally teeny little full range speakers in each ear. And so I get a full range of sound, just like sitting in front of the best stereo speakers you've ever heard, coming right into my skull. And it's pretty amazing. So I just wanted to let you guys know that any in-ear is better than no in-ear, but Future Sonics makes the best in-ears that I have personally ever heard. And I've tried an awful lot of them. It's a really different thing, and they cost less than most. So if you happen to be looking for any, give them a look, futuresonics.com. That's my ad for the night. I told you it was going to be a little different than normal, but I wanted to let you guys know about something I'm quite passionate about. I love all of my gear, you know I do, but Future Sonics has never let me down for almost 20 years now, and I think it's worth checking out. So again, tonight, thank you to Sim for hanging out with me, and we'll talk to you again next week is our last show of the season. Season 1 will be finished next week with my guest, Dorico Watson from the Victor Wooten Band and BB and CC Winans, among others. Dorico's a longtime friend as well. It seems like all I ever get on here are my old friends, but you know what? I got great friends. So that's what we're going to do. We'll see you guys next week for another episode of Groove Diner After Dark. Thanks a lot.